The Parkers brought laughs and good vibes in the late 90s and early 2000s. It wasn't just a sitcom. For a lot of us, it felt like home. But behind the scenes, not everyone got a happy ending. Some cast members faced serious illness, sudden accidents, and silent battles the world never saw. Today, we're taking a closer look at their real stories, the wins, the losses, and what Hollywood never showed us. If The Parkers was part of your life, hit like, subscribe, and drop your memories in the comments. Let's get started. Ivette Wilson played Andell Wilkerson, the loyal best friend of Nicky Parker and owner of the local diner in The Parkers. She joined the show in 1999 at age 35 and stayed through nearly every one of its 110 episodes. Fans loved her for her sharp humor, big heart, and the way she always had Nicky's back. But off camera, Ivette's life took a very different turn. After The Parkers ended in 2004, acting jobs became hard to come by. She only landed small parts here and there, and over time she slowly disappeared from the spotlight. Then came the health battles. First, she was diagnosed with severe kidney disease, which required a transplant and regular dialysis. But before she could recover, she was hit with cervical cancer. It spread quickly and made her already fragile health even worse. Her marriage to music producer Jerome Harry, which began in 2001, was once her emotional safe space. But as money got tight and her health got worse, the stress took a toll on their relationship. Toward the end of her life, things became really difficult. Medical bills piled up. She couldn't cover the costs on her own, so close friends started a crowdfunding campaign to help. Ivette passed away on June 14, 2012. She was only 48. She left quietly with little media attention, but her fans never forgot. To them, she'll always be Andell, funny, loyal, and full of heart. Isabelle Sanford played Evelyn Nana Smith, Kim's grandmother, in a 2001 guest appearance on The Parkers. She was 84 at the time, and even though it was a small role, it was a fitting nod to a true TV legend. Born Eloise Gwendolyn Sanford on August 29, 1917 in Harlem, Isabelle's life had its share of highs and lows. She married William Richmond, a house painter who, according to her, lacked ambition. Their marriage was full of tension and betrayal. She once called it stifling and cruel. In 1960, after years of struggle, she made a bold move, leaving him and starting over in Los Angeles with her 3 children. To support them, she worked as a clerk at IBM while performing in small theaters. Her big break came with the role of Louise "Wheezy" Jefferson in All in the Family, which later became The Jeffersons. That role made her a household name and earned her a place in history as the first Black woman to win an Emmy for Outstanding Lead Actress in a comedy series. But even with all that success, Isabelle still faced inequality. She was often paid less than her white male co-stars and passed over for roles because of her age and race. After The Jeffersons ended, she only got short-term gigs, and Hollywood began to forget her. In 2003, she underwent surgery on her carotid artery, which seriously affected her health. Just months later, on July 9, 2004, Isabelle passed away at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center at the age of 86. She was laid to rest at Forest Lawn Cemetery, where many Hollywood legends are buried. At the time, her net worth was estimated at $3 million, thanks in part to royalties and the lasting love for her iconic role. Thomas Michael Ford played Mel Parker, Nicky's ex-husband and Kim's father. He brought emotional depth to every scene, showing a more serious side of the sitcom. Born on September 5, 1964 in Los Angeles, Ford was already known to many fans from his earlier work. But the Parkers introduced him to a new generation. After that peak, though, his career started to slow down. He tried making a comeback with shows like New York Undercover, Who's Got Jokes, and stage plays like South of Where We Live, but none of them took off the way he hoped. Quietly, he faced financial problems, bad investments, and growing debt. It was a tough chapter for someone once known as the Pope of Comedy. In his personal life, things weren't easier. His 17-year marriage to Gina Sasso ended in 2014. It left emotional scars and 2 children divided between their parents. But off-screen, Ford worked hard to give back. He started a nonprofit called Be Still and Know to support young people. He wrote motivational books like Positive Attitude and I Am Responsible for Me, and he regularly spoke at schools, encouraging kids to believe in themselves. In June 2016, he finished a personal documentary on bullying called Through My Lens. Less than 4 months later, tragedy struck. On October 12, 2016, Ford passed away from a ruptured abdominal aneurysm. He'd been dealing with chronic pain and limited mobility for some time. He was 52 and living in Atlanta with his girlfriend Vivian Brazil. At the time of his passing, his net worth was estimated at around $2 million, mostly from royalties and his work in inspirational writing. Gary Coleman played himself, a brief but meaningful appearance that reminded fans of the star he once was. He was born on February 8, 1968, in Zion, Illinois, and dealt with major health issues from a young age. A congenital kidney condition stunted his growth at 4'8", required lifelong dialysis, and kept him from living a typical life. Despite that, he became a household name playing Arnold in Different Strokes, earning millions as a teen actor. But most of that money was lost to mismanagement by his adoptive parents and financial advisor. In 1989, Gary sued them and won, but only received $1.3 million, a small slice of what he had made. As he got older, his career fell apart. He struggled financially, worked as a mall security guard, and took self-deprecating roles on TV just to stay afloat. His marriage to Shannon Price was rocky, marked by fights, emotional pain, and distance. Though they separated in less than a year, she remained in his life, and her role during his final days raised serious questions. On May 28, 2010, Gary died at age 42 after suffering a brain hemorrhage from a fall. It was Shannon who authorized the removal of life support, a decision that sparked controversy. At the time of his death, his net worth was just $75,000, a shocking drop for someone who had once been one of the most recognizable stars on television. Estelle Harris played Miss Agnes, a small guest role that stood out thanks to her unmistakable comedic style. Born on April 22, 1928, Estelle had a career that lasted decades, but near the end, the spotlight started to fade. Known for her high-pitched, playful voice, she was full of energy on screen, but off-screen she was a quiet, private person who often felt alone and forgotten. She found success in voice acting and commercials, but her most iconic role, Estelle Costanza on Seinfeld, was both a blessing and a limitation. It made millions laugh, but also made it hard for her to land deeper, more dramatic roles. In 2021, her husband Cy Harris passed away after nearly 70 years together. His death left a huge void. In her final years, Estelle struggled with health problems, memory loss, and the quiet sadness of outliving many of her closest friends. Back in 2001, she was in a serious car accident and barely survived. It was a harsh reminder of how fragile life can be. Though she kept a cheerful spirit on screen, she spent her last years quietly in Palm Desert, California, mostly retired from show business. Estelle Harris passed away on April 2, 2022, just 20 days before turning 94 due to natural causes. At the time, her net worth was estimated at around $5 million, mainly from long-term Disney voice contracts and ad campaign residuals. Nancy Wilson played Aunt Rita, a small guest role delivered with her signature grace and that warm, velvety voice jazz fans knew so well. Born on February 20, 1937, Nancy was a global music icon, but her personal life was far from easy. After divorcing drummer Kenny Dennis in 1970, she became a single mom, working nonstop to support her children. Later, she married Reverend Y. Burton, who brought her renewed hope. But even that relationship came with quiet sacrifices. To fit the role of a minister's wife, she avoided many familiar venues and gave up parts of her career for family. Grief continued to follow her. In 1998, she lost both of her parents. A decade later, her husband passed away from kidney cancer. The loss pushed her into solitude. She left the spotlight and moved to the mountains of California. Her health had already started declining in 2006 due to anemia and potassium deficiency. It forced her to cancel shows and slow down. In her final years, she battled lung disease and cancer. Public appearances became rare, but she never lost her sense of grace and gratitude. She once said, "There's no place like Ohio. That's where I began, and that's where I want to end." Nancy Wilson passed away on December 13, 2018, at her home in Pioneertown, California. She was 81. At the time of her death, her net worth was estimated at $15 million, so mostly from her decades of music, performances, and international recording contracts. David Graff played the health inspector, a small but sharp role that carried the same commanding energy fans remembered from his days as Sergeant Tackleberry in Police Academy. Born on April 16, 1950, David rose to fame with that over-the-top gun-loving character. It made him a household name, but also boxed him in. The role was so iconic, it followed him for the rest of his career, often limiting his chances to play anything different. Off-screen, David's life was much quieter and heavier than people realized. He had been married to Catherine Graff since 1983, and they had 2 sons. But the family faced constant financial pressure, especially as acting gigs became more scarce. Despite that, he kept up a cheerful front and stayed committed to his work. As time went on, small roles and volunteer work with the SAG union brought little financial return. The family lived modestly and often had to borrow money just to get by. David also struggled with health issues, but ignored the signs. He'd been dealing with chest pain, shortness of breath, and fatigue. Believing it was just stress, he put off a heart exam so he could attend his brother-in-law's wedding in Phoenix. Just hours after arriving, he collapsed. It happened on April 7, 2001. Doctors confirmed it was a massive heart attack. He died at the age of 50, leaving behind his wife, 2 sons, and countless fans with no chance to say goodbye. Graff was laid to rest at Forest Rose Cemetery in Ohio. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at just $500,000. Though he spent his career fighting for underrepresented actors, he may have forgotten to listen to his own heart, both literally and emotionally. Johnny Brown played Man, a brief guest role that most viewers wouldn't remember, but one that quietly nodded to a career that once lit up TV screens across America. He was born on June 11, 1937, and became a household name after Good Times. Johnny tried to keep that momentum going with guest spots on shows like The Jeffersons, Martin, Family Matters, and Kenan and Kel. But the more he worked, the more he got typecast into the same kind of roles, ones that never quite let him break free. Even with his warm smile, standout voice, and expressive face, Hollywood slowly moved on. In his later years, he was mostly seen in commercials and tribute videos. Outside of showbiz, Johnny had something many in Hollywood don't: stability. He shared over 60 years of marriage with June Brown and was a proud father of 2, including actress Sharon Catherine Brown. Still, the fading spotlight took a toll. Johnny spoke openly about feeling invisible in an industry that once cheered for him. The career dip and the silence that came with it led him through waves of frustration and quiet depression. On March 2, 2022, shortly after a doctor's appointment to have a pacemaker installed, Johnny collapsed. He was rushed to a hospital in Los Angeles but didn't survive. He died at age 84. His passing didn't make huge headlines, but that's the thing about Johnny Brown. His legacy wasn't loud. It was honest, humble, and deeply human. Jean Sincere played a character simply credited as Woman, a brief role but one that quietly showed her lifelong dedication to the craft of acting. She was born on August 16, 1919, and spent nearly 8 decades performing. From stage productions like Brigadoon and Wonderful Town to voicing Mrs. Hoganson in The Incredibles, Jean brought presence and poise to every role. Even in the smallest parts, she carried the weight of experience. Her life off stage, though, was filled with quiet heartbreak. During World War II, she performed for U.S. troops, not for attention or fame, but because she believed in using her talent to uplift others. She married Charles Carmine Zambello in 1949, and for decades they were seen as a rock-solid couple. But when Charles passed away in 1992, Jean withdrew. The loss hit her deeply. Though she had two accomplished children, an opera director and an art dealer, she chose to live simply, away from Hollywood and away from the spotlight. In her final years, Sincere struggled with age-related memory loss. She gradually forgot many of the roles she once brought to life. Jean passed away on April 3, 2013 in Los Angeles. She was 93. Her name may not have always been in lights, but Jean Sincere's commitment, quiet grace, and devotion to performance never faded, even when her memory did. James Karen played Robert Vanlo, a small guest role that carried the weight of a long-respected career in film and television. He was born Jacob Karnofsky on November 28, 1923 in Pennsylvania. By the time he was 77, James had already made a name for himself in classics like Poltergeist, Wall Street, The Return of the Living Dead, and The Pursuit of Happiness. On screen, he exuded experience and quiet strength. But behind the scenes, Karen lived with quiet voids. His first marriage to singer-actress Susan Reed ended in 1967. They had one son, Reed Karen, but their bond faded over time. Later in life, James admitted he wasn't afraid of fading fame. He was afraid of being forgotten. He wasn't chasing the spotlight. What haunted him was the idea that all those years of hard work might just disappear in the shadow of younger stars. Away from the camera, James was soft-spoken and deeply reflective. He didn't talk much, but when he did, it mattered. In his 90s, his health declined, his memory faded, his strength gave out. But still, he worked. He showed up. His late career role in The Pursuit of Happiness was a bright spot, even as most of his final work came from smaller, low-budget projects. When James passed away at home in Los Angeles on October 23, 2018, he was 94 years old. His net worth was estimated at about $1 million. Not much by Hollywood standards, but he never measured his life that way. He belonged to a generation that valued humility over ego and passion over fame, and even when his body told him to stop, he didn't. James Karen kept giving, right to the end. Robert Doqui played Walter, a short but strong guest role that reflected the steady presence he brought to every performance. He was born on April 20, 1934 in Stillwater, Oklahoma. With his deep, commanding voice and calm energy, Robert was instantly recognizable. But despite his talents, he was often stuck in supporting roles. Even as Sergeant Reed in all three RoboCop films, his character never got the development it deserved. He was always there, reliable, solid, but overlooked. This constant sidelining wore on him both professionally and personally. His marriage to actress Janie Michelle, once filled with promise, ended in 1978. As his star faded, Robert quietly battled something far more serious: chronic lung disease. He never spoke publicly about his health struggles and kept working, taking roles in shows like Star Trek, Deep Space Nine, even as his condition worsened. Behind the scenes, he was growing weaker, but he kept showing up, he kept acting, not for fame, but because he loved the craft. On February 9, 2008, Robert passed away in Los Angeles from natural causes. He was 73. To most fans, he'll always be that no-nonsense sergeant in RoboCop, giving orders with steel in his voice. But to those who knew his journey, Robert Doqui was something more: a quiet fighter who never stopped working, even when the spotlight turned away. Terry Rhodes played Reginald, a brief guest role hidden within a lively cast, but that small moment carried more weight than it seemed. Born on December 31, 1951 in Phoenix, Arizona, Terry started his career in the 1980s, appearing on sitcoms like Friends, Seinfeld, House MD, and Desperate Housewives. Every role, no matter how small, showed his charm and precision. But Hollywood never gave him the lead. He often got typecast as the spiritual side character, and that began to wear on him, especially as many of his peers reached stardom. Personal life wasn't easy either. He divorced his first wife, Deborah Renee Yetter, with whom he had 2 children. In 1990, Terry married actress Lisa Sims, and they stayed together until he passed away. But he openly shared that his biggest regret was never having children with Lisa, a sorrow that followed him in his later years. Then came the illness. Terry was diagnosed with amyloidosis, a rare and painful disease that took a heavy toll on his body and spirit. For almost a year, he fought its brutal effects and became too weak to continue working. On October 11, 2013, Terry passed away in Encino, California at the age of 61. He died in the arms of his second wife, his quiet, steadfast companion to the end. Even though he never got the spotlight he deserved, Terry's legacy lives on in the dedication he carried, both in life and love. The stars we loved from the Parkers gave us laughs, heart, and unforgettable moments. But behind the screen, many faced pain we never saw, reminding us that fame doesn't protect anyone from life's harshest trials. Whose story moved you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if this show was part of your life, hit like, subscribe, and let's keep their memories alive together.